It may not seem like it today, but once upon a time, Call of Duty was the king of the World War II first-person shooter. Its snappy gameplay, atmosphere, sound design, and presentation was unrivaled by most competitors. On today's evolution of Call of Duty, we'll be taking a look at arguably the most famous SMG in Call of Duty's World War II arsenal, the German MP40. There's been a lot of incarnations over the years, so before we begin, I recommend leaving a like, subscribing, and if you enjoyed the video, consider sharing it around since YouTube isn't the biggest fan of firearms talk. And feel free to check out the evolution of Call of Duty playlists that I've created for you. With that being said, let's get started. Before Warzone was a twinkle in Activision's eye, there was a 2003 shooter called Call of Duty. At the time, it was one of the most impressive World War II shooter outings in the market, with unparalleled production value thanks in no small part to the new studio Infinity Ward's all-star development teams. And, of course, a beefed-up Quake 3 game engine. In spite of its age, the respect this game has for the Second World War is still felt, and it's a damn good campaign if you have some time and want a trip down memory lane. And memory lane is where our journey begins. The German MP40 of Call of Duty 1 is a submachine gun found throughout the campaign. It has a slow rate of fire, tight hip-fire accuracy, and a meaty magazine size, which allows for sustained, suppressive fire when in a pinch. The animation quality for it is quite good, with a good sense of friction and weight. Though it must be said, the soldier seems to just yank the magazine out of the weapon without hitting the slide release, which isn't how this gun works in the real world. But considering the age of the game and how satisfying the actual animation is, I'd say it's easy to overlook. This thing still feels good to use. It's one of the best weapons in the game, easier to control than the Thompson submachine gun, and with plenty of ammo to pick up off of fallen Jerry's, it's a weapon worth holding onto for close quarters firefights when breaching buildings, and especially in the game's competitive multiplayer, as it's a first-in-class for CQC, with its low fire rate making it even easy to use at a range if you know how to control the recoil. Call of Duty 1 is where the MP40's journey began. It was a humble beginning for such an iconic weapon, and almost 2 decades later, the animations and sound work make it feel satisfying to use. Infinity Ward killed it on their first time around. This was a fantastic incarnation of the weapon. The first Call of Duty was a smash hit. It was a critical darling, and without hesitation, a sequel was greenlit. The Quake 3 engine used in the original game was heavily updated, reworked, and refined until it became the first proper iteration of the famous Call of Duty engine. It supported complex, low-visibility fog and smoke systems, more complex AI and animation systems, and with this increase in scope came more polish and style to the arsenal of the Second World War. The MP40 makes a triumphant return with updated materials, textures, and details, or various scuffs and scratches. It gives the weapon a sense of history and realism within the world. It also received new animations that have the soldier properly using the mag release this time. It's an animation that would go on to appear in other Call of Duty games due to just how excellently it holds up. Even by modern standards, it's a damn good looking reload animation. In gameplay, it's more firmly rooted in its close quarters role, as the aggressive recoil that's been added to it makes it very hard to properly use at long range. As such, it's best to keep this weapon in your back pocket while reserving the primary slot for a ranged rifle that you can pick off targets with downrange. The MP40 of Call of Duty 2 is a solid weapon. It's not as accurate as its predecessor, but its roaring firing sound and sexy animations make it a weapon that is consistently fun to use. But that's up to personal preference. How do you think it holds up? Outside of side games and spin-offs such as Finest Hour and Call of Duty 2, Big Red 1, the MP40 had a strong career of updating itself, feeling better and snappier with each new installment. That is until Call of Duty 3. Due to Activision's timelessly strict release cycle, the fresh team at Treyarch were given less than a year to make their first ever proper Call of Duty release, and the cracks unfortunately do show despite the developers' best efforts. Many weapons in the game feel just off with floaty or unfinished animations, and the MP40 unfortunately didn't make it out of this unscathed. The animations for it are quite complicated, but the details are lacking a sense of weight and precision, and it gives off the vibe that the animator for the MP40 didn't have enough time to tighten up the details and was forced to compromise. It's a floaty and rather distracting animation that also covers up most of the screen when reloading, which makes it just hard to run around with. In combat, it's unfortunately not much better, retaining much of the recoil of Call of Duty 2, but due to Call of Duty 3's heavier and less responsive aiming controls, it makes it a weapon that's difficult to use in most situations. It's hard to be too critical of Call of Duty 3 due to its infamously rough development history, but thankfully, Treyarch's next entry would have more time to cook in the oven, and they'd be able to give the MP40 the love it deserved. But here and now, in Call of Duty 3, it's a bit of a disappointment for such an iconic weapon. What do you think, though? Call of Duty World at War was the final mainline World War II Call of Duty on the 7th generation of consoles, and Treyarch gave the historic conflict a powerful send-off. They had a lot to prove after the lukewarm Call of Duty 3, and they gave fans not just a fantastic co-op campaign with an atmosphere powerful enough to bathe in, they also delivered a fantastic multiplayer package, and of course, the breakout Nazi Zombies mode, which we covered the production of in the evolution of Call of Duty's ray gun. The MP40 was back, this time using the reload animations from Call of Duty 2 and some new impactful sound effects. It was an incredible rendition that felt and looked and sounded satisfying to use. The weapon is extremely controllable during gameplay when firing from the hip or aiming down the sights, and for console players, it's rather infamously a weapon that just dominated due to it requiring only 2 shots to kill a player. This ridiculous damage was nerfed in a patch for PC, but back in the day it was quite expensive to patch console games, so if a weapon launched overpowered, chances are it's probably gonna stay that way. The MP40 on console was left unchallenged and broken beyond your wildest dreams, and thus it has a legacy onto itself. It's worth running with the Juggernaut perk, as well as something like maybe a silencer or an aperture sight. In the Nazi Zombies mode, the MP40 proved to be an excellent weapon due to its cheap price on the wall and a heavy headshot damage. Pairing it with a double tap perk to increase the fire rate also allowed it to be a common go-to weapon on the map Verrückt, and in the game's final Nazi Zombies map, Der Ries, the MP40 could be upgraded into the Afterburner, which sported a massive 64-round magazine, with the downside of burning through its spare ammo very quickly. The MP40 of World at War is still considered by many in the Call of Duty community to be the peak of this historic weapon. Listen to the rhythmic thumping of its fire rate, and take in the memories this weapon gave players over the years. This is the sound of Call of Duty history. With the Second World War in the rearview mirror, the Call of Duty series was set on pursuing conflicts further in human history. Call of Duty Black Ops took place in the 1960s and 70s during the Cold War. Despite the time period, the game made room for many returning World War II weapons in its campaign and zombies mode. Most of these weapons were directly ported from World at War into the Black Ops engine and thus lacked animations such as dolphin diving, and often they just used their World at War sounds or even sounds from other Black Ops guns. But one specific weapon was given the production value it rightfully deserved: the MP40. The MP40 of Black Ops uses new, sleeker textures and an updated sound profile. It still uses the timeless Call of Duty 2 reload animation, but with the healthy addition of a solid sprint and dolphin dive animation, it's quite nice in players' hands. It's found in the campaign mission Project Nova as the default German weapon, coated with a nice frosty texture, and it can be found off the wall on many zombies maps such as Kino der Toten, Call of the Dead, and Resurrection DLC maps. In zombies, it performs mostly like its World at War counterpart, albeit with slightly weaker damage output, and when upgraded, it once again becomes the Afterburner, with not much changed or altered. Interestingly, during development, the MP40 was used to test the in-development care package system, and voice files for it still exist in the game. Here, I'll play one for you.
MP40 ready for action. Say hello to my MP40. MP40 ready for deployment.
The MP40 of Black Ops was the final entry in the golden age of the MP40, for as the series went further and further into the future, this little weapon saw diminishing production value and love from developers. But for now, it's a well-remembered incarnation. The final Zombies map for the futuristic shooter Call of Duty Black Ops II transported players back in time to a diesel-punk World War I setting with period-inaccurate weaponry and science fiction technology. One of these out-of-time weapons was the MP40, this time sporting a new model, completely new animations and sounds. The MP40 of Black Ops II has much floatier, less heavy animations than the timeless Call of Duty 2 animations, and this does lead to the MP40 of Black Ops II feeling slightly less satisfying to use in players' hands. Treyarch also didn't calculate the reload timer properly, so it can't be reload cancelled, a tactic that you can usually use on all weapons in a Call of Duty game to finish their reload animations early. It does slightly more damage than its Black Ops counterpart, it's slightly more expensive when buying off the wall, it sports more spare ammo, and when pulling it from the box, it can even come with a stock attachment, which allows you to move faster when aiming down the sights. It's a solid go-to weapon for the map Origins, arguably the poster child weapon of the map due to its reliability off the wall and the ease at which players can acquire it, but it doesn't feel nearly as satisfying as the World at War or Black Ops incarnations. It doesn't let the player down, it's just not quite as charming to use, but as usual, I'll pass judgment off to you. Advanced Warfare was the first mainline Call of Duty game from the new studio Sledgehammer Games. Their Call of Duty took players into the far future where warfare was completely privatized and soldiers were made into employees of private military companies such as the Atlas Corporation. During the course of the game's multiplayer DLC season, Sledgehammer made many previous weapons of the series available to players via their loot box system, and the MP40 was one of these weapons. Off the bat, it sports a nice, high-quality model, but the animations for it are a tad on the stiff side, and the firing sound uses the KF5 SMG, which doesn't really fit the sound profile of the MP40 very well. It's also worth mentioning that the fire rate is much faster than a real-world MP40, which a lack of authenticity for real-world weapons becomes a bit of a Sledgehammer staple, but we'll get to that later. It's a fine weapon to use in combat, and not unusable by any means, but it's one of the less used weapons in the multiplayer due to the loot box nature of its acquisition, and the fact that there are honestly stronger alternatives at the player's disposal. One of the variants that can be obtained in loot boxes does feature a cheeky nod to Call of Duty Zombies via its name, the Afterburn, which is kind of fun. Here in Advanced Warfare, the MP40 was a fine, if slightly undercooked inclusion to the game's arsenal. It wasn't bad, but it could have used more love. The MP40 made a return in two different forms in the Treyarch futuristic shooter Call of Duty Black Ops III. The first form was the fictional HG-40, a far-future submachine gun that was clearly designed to evoke the MP40 in spirit. The animation work is a bit on the floaty side, but with a nice little HK slap of the bolt, the HG-40 feels fun to use. Unfortunately, that usage will be quite limited. The sentiment within the Call of Duty community and folks I've talked to, such as Foxy Dubs on YouTube, seems to be that the HG-40 is a pretty mediocre submachine gun. Its low damage and low fire rate causes it to be easily beaten out by other SMGs in close quarters, and its recoil means that it can't even compete with ranged SMGs, trapping it in this weird Call of Duty purgatory. It's just not that good in most situations compared to other weapons that are readily available to the player. Thankfully, in the Zombies mode, it's seen a bit more love, showing up in the Zombies map Zetsubo no Shima, where it is ever so slightly stronger than the Black Ops II MP40. It's a great pull from the box, and when upgrading, it becomes the Afterburner 2.0. The HG40 would even go on to make an appearance in Call of Duty Mobile years later. Its second incarnation came with the Zombies Chronicles DLC, where it can be found on the wall in most maps. The MP40 uses higher quality materials and textures that make it stand out quite nicely. However, instead of giving it proper sound effects and animations that it could call its own, Treyarch just opted to port over the animations and sounds of the HG40, which don't line up quite as well with the MP40's model or sound profile. This is a problem that affects a lot of weapons in the game, such as the M1911, but thanks to the MP40's healthy ammo supply, it is technically an upgrade over the World at War and Black Ops MP40, even if it lacks in the sound, animation, and personality department. Now, the real question is, what do we like better? The MP40 of Black Ops 3 or the HG40? After one too many futuristic Call of Duty games, the series was brought back to where it all began with Sledgehammer Games' Call of Duty World War II. It was the first time the series had returned to this historic time period in almost a decade, and the powerful Sledgehammer branch of the Call of Duty engine brought the conflict to life with an extreme level of graphical fidelity. The MP40 of Call of Duty World War II sports an incredibly high-quality model, easily beating out any previous incarnation in terms of level of detail, material work, and polish. What's a bit less polished, however, is the historical accuracy and authenticity. The MP40 of World War II has a very high fire rate, bright muzzle flash, and cracky sound profile, none of which actually fit the weapon's real-world identity. When combined with the extremely bouncy and floaty animation work of the game, it makes the MP40 just not really feel that impactful. It's almost like Sledgehammer wanted a different kind of submachine gun, and they just applied an MP40 skin over this one, regardless of if it felt appropriate for the weapon. In multiplayer, it's a solid firearm to run and gun with thanks to its high fire rate and healthy magazine size, though it's often overlooked due to multiple balancing patches increasing its recoil over time. It's best to run with any attachment that can tighten up the recoil since it has quite a high headshot multiplier. It also shows up in the game's Nazi Zombies Horde mode, where it boasts some of the weapon's best stats and ammo supply in any game ever, serving players well into the high rounds. When upgrading the weapon, it becomes the hardly working, which sees a heavy damage upgrade and ammo upgrade. When it comes to balancing, it's important for casual shooters to not stick too closely to realism, but past Call of Duty games attempted to balance the real-world characteristics of weapons into their combat loop. Sledgehammer Games opted to just change the MP40's personality, making it a high fire rate weapon with an ear-piercing sound effect and messy spray pattern. It looked like an MP40, but it didn't feel like an MP40, if you catch my drift. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 was released in 2018, and despite being Treyarch's third futuristic shooter in a row, it made sure to pay tribute to the weapons that came before, although in the case of the MP40, this tribute could have used a bit more effort. The MP40 of Black Ops 4 is less of an upgrade over Black Ops 3 and more of a side grade. On one hand, Treyarch actually gave it new animations that fit the profile of the weapon much better, but like most of their animation work in Black Ops 4, it's a very stiff-looking animation. The model itself looks quite good, but when compared to Call of Duty World War II the previous year, the cracks in Treyarch's rather outdated version of the Call of Duty engine really showed. The MP40 of Black Ops 4 just looks rubbery, and there's no way around that. Performance-wise, it's a solid weapon in the game's Blackout Battle Royale mode due to its controllable rate of fire, and in the Zombies mode, it's an ever-reliable weapon that is worth using only if you're feeling nostalgic. Because like most weapons in Black Ops 4 Zombies, it's not worth holding onto if you're aiming for high rounds. The MP40 is a confusing inclusion to the game. It never really found a great niche for itself anywhere. It exists mostly as fan service, but with Call of Duty games a decade old sporting more personality, this MP40 felt about as lifeless as the undead you mowed down. But how do you feel about it? the time of writing, Call of Duty Vanguard is the latest entry in the Call of Duty series to support the timeless MP40. The game runs on the 2019 Modern Warfare Reboot game engine and attempts to infuse the Second World War with the same tactical operator vibes of the Modern Warfare Reboot. The results were unfortunately a tonally confused game that very rarely ever felt like it was set in the Second World War, but that won't stop us from taking a look at its MP40. The MP40 of Call of Duty Vanguard is an incredibly high-quality production with hefty animation quality, controller feedback, and recoil. It's one of the best submachine guns of the game and the Warzone client with its low rate of fire, making it very easy to control when firing downrange. It can be outfitted with a variety of attachments that can mangle and twist the beautiful MP40 into something damn near unrecognizable. The best attachments for it are those that can control its recoil and stabilize its view kick. This allows this little SMG to become something of a ranged terror. Its performance, complemented by some solid reload animations, make it a great feeling weapon in players' hands. But we do have to address an elephant in the room, that C-clamp grip. The C-clamp grip, or as it's known, thumb over bore, is a modern operator technique when holding a weapon. It gives operators more control over the vertical climb of their weapon during fire, and this technique most certainly did not exist or used during the Second World War. It's an incredibly strange lack of care to give the MP40 a C-clamp grip style, but given how Vanguard seems incredibly unenthusiastic about authenticity, it's probably forgivable. I guess it depends on how tolerant you are for in-your-face weapon mistakes in first-person shooters. The MP40 is such a beautiful weapon in the Call of Duty series. It's got an instantly memorable design, a lovingly slow firing pattern, and it's a standout weapon in almost every Call of Duty entry it appeared in. What's your favorite version of the MP40? I'd be curious to know down below, and feel free to share the video around if you enjoyed it. It really helps out since my channel isn't used to videos that aren't Halo. And speaking of that, next up on the list of evolution videos is the evolution of Halo's elites, and then the evolution of Call of Duty's M4A1. So stick around for those. A huge thank you to my channel supporters. You guys are the real MVPs. And also check out my Twitch if you haven't already. Alright, that's it. I'm off. Enjoy your weekend, and I hope to see you guys again soon.